What's up, guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you, guys, so much for the support on the last episode. It was absolutely brilliant. I know Guess Who isn't as popular as we actually enjoy doing it, but you know what? It is what it is. Harry's back again, as always. How you doing?
Yeah, good.
Nice week of peace, isn't it, without Tottenham?
I enjoyed the international break.
Yeah, I must say I am as well. And I'll tell you what, actually, on the topic of international breaks, you see that as we're recording this on Monday, as you guys know, you see Tell scored 2 absolute peaches today.
Who?
Tell.
No, I was watching Greece last night, so.
Oh, fair. No, today for Friars under 21s, he scored 2 absolute peaches. Like the proper kind of finishes that you expected when we brought him in. I'm just starting to think now, the amount of players that are playing so well for internationals and not playing well for the manager.
And also, international football is a completely different level to the Premier League. And especially under 21 level as well.
It is, but I think
we're talking there was so many exciting players we signed who were below 21 or whatever, under 21s. I remember back in the past, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're the next big, I don't know, whatever."
Yeah.
And then most of them, if not all,
I just think Ange's part of the problem. To be honest, I can't believe I made that comment before you. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Tottenham Chelsea game. Obviously, the game's on a Wednesday, so that's why we're recording it a week early because it's more important than talking about Southampton.
Is it Thursday?
Thursday, Wednesday, whatever. One of them. Let me check. England won 3-0. Eze scored. Fair play to him.
I think Kane got 2 goals, I think.
He got a goal and an assist, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he's just got a goal. What was it for Tottenham? It's the Thursday 8:00 kickoff. So you guys will have a whole another episode before we wait. Actually, this is really bullshit because we won't even be able to talk about the game before the following episode goes out.
Well, that's because of the way the fixtures are.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying, isn't it? We'll have to think of a more an easier way of doing this next year. But yeah, so we'll talk about the Chelsea game and then basically abandon it. And then we'll talk about whatever the games are coming up after. Quickly, before we go into the Chelsea game, because I actually don't think this episode will be too long. I say that every time, but what did you make of Djed Spence's comments?
I haven't seen them.
You haven't seen them? Okay.
I've not really. I've been honest I've enjoyed this week and I've rarely looked at any Tottenham stuff. I watched the 2 Greece games and we won 3-0 against Scotland. And Caresas, the 17-year-old we've got, is looking.
Yeah, I saw. It was an absolute screamer.
But he's honestly he's been linked with Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Chelsea, and Arsenal, and he's only 17, and he's playing for the first team for Greece. So I know Greece aren't the best. Now they're actually Group A now for Nations League, so they got promoted because Scotland got relegated. But he's a really exciting player. But obviously, he's only 17, so we'll see how it goes. And he plays in Belgium League, so yeah, see how it goes. But that's why I haven't really seen any Spurs stuff that much, really, to be honest.
So basically, I only saw it about 20 minutes ago, to be fair. So basically, he was talking about Antonio Conte's treatment and the fact that it completely knocked his confidence and belief in himself when Conte said that he didn't want him. That his agent said that he was going to deal with it, and Conte doubled down and made another comment not long after that, just made it worse. The fact that Spence only ever spoke to his assistant once and never, ever actually spoke to Conte. Conte refused to talk to him. His reaction to people saying, oh, he's finally got a second chance, his exact reaction was, people say it's good to see me getting a second chance and doing well. I never got a first chance, so what do you mean? And I think that is so true. That is so true.
The thing is, I don't think, to me, it's like he's taking it personally. I don't think it's Spencer's own fault that Conte treated him that way, right? It's basically the manager got given a play he didn't want. Obviously, in hindsight now, everyone's saying, oh, he's a great player and blah, blah. Also, we need to bear in mind another thing with Spence, right? I'm not saying he's not playing well, by the way, but the rest of our players, especially on this manager, look absolutely dog shit. So, by default, the one bright spark is going to look like a really, really, really bright spark because everyone else is looking absolutely awful, right? So, maybe in 2 years, we might have a different conversation and say, oh, we now have a better right back. We just don't know. But I'm just saying, yes, because I remember that Sissoko had that one season when everyone was like, "Oh,
unbelievable."
But then in reality, everyone else that season wasn't that great. Who were better high level players than him.
Yeah, but this is where I
So,
think you have to give a player credit
for
because
example, say some sort of player who gives like 7, 8 to 9 out of 10 every week, like a Kane or something, and then
yeah.
one season for some reason he only gives like a 6 or a 7, and then the one player who normally gives like a 6 gives like a 7. You're going to have the 7's going to look better than the players normally like an 8 or a 9.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
not
think
saying
to some extent, I think with attackers, I definitely agree with you. I think with comparing a defender to attacker, it's slightly different. I think
it's the same, really, because like obviously everyone banged on last season about Romero and Van der Ven. Now everyone's this season saying Romero's been iffy and whatever. So, by the
yeah,
way,
but
I'm
I
not
feel like
Romero's biggest fan.
that's like Levy getting in people's heads, kind of mentally preparing himself for the idea that he's going to go. Tottenham fans do this all the time when players are linked with a leave or a move away, and it's 90% saying it's going to happen. They always try and downplay players that haven't necessarily played badly, just to make
I'm not saying
themselves feel
Romero's
better
bad
about the
defender.
idea.
I've never been like the one stuck because our players love to throw this world class and
Yeah,
fantastic and these words like this all the time about our players. I'm not saying they're not good players. Good is for me like a different level to like fantastic or like world class. Like it's a good but I've never thought Romero was like a world class defender anyway. Like he's a good defender. So is Van der Ven, but again, Van der Ven in a different system would he be as good? I don't know. And also, I mean, you think about his hamstrings, I guess.
yeah.
But like what I'm saying is that is kind of a factor. So with Spence, I think we just need to wait and see again because say we get a better manager next season and we get signed some better defenders or like we change the system where we play a bit as well, like we still be as bright. I don't know. Like,
Do you think? Do you think though, given the way he played at Nottingham Forest and given the system Conte played, is it fair to say Conte got it wrong?
No, I think it's too early to say something like that because Conte got Basuma right.
The reason why I'm saying no with Spence is
But
because
also, he didn't want him. Like, it's nothing personal against Spence.
but this is my point though, right?
It's nothing personal against Spence. It's not like he hates Spence as a person or he doesn't. It's because Conte wanted senior players that we know would come in and even spoke about this after the transfer saying this club should be signing 2 to 3 established names every summer. I'm not saying there's have to be like.
But let me say this though. Right,
One
this is
signing
where
that window. We've got Longley, Spence. I can't remember who else it was. Like some.
yeah, it was crap, wasn't it? But
Crap
this is
window.
where I'm on
So,
the
for
opposite side of that.
me, if I was Conte, I would have said the same thing because it's a club signing.
But this is where it comes
If he
down to the
went,
point of then.
he said, okay, theoretically, because obviously Spence actually came before Porro. So let's just talk this out of the way, yeah?
Yeah,
Theoretically, say Porro will sign that summer instead of Spence, right? Just theoretically.
yeah.
That would have been, say, an established, I'd argue an established person he wanted, because remember, I think he wanted Porro. Yeah? He would have seen that as a better window because it's an established name coming that he knows he can put him in his system because he played there for Lisbon, bear in mind, at a high
Yeah.
level, at a high level, and he'll come in and do a job because Conte wasn't a fan of signing the youth policy of Tottenham Hotspur.
Okay, I understand that, and that was
Never
part of the
worked.
problem.
The
No,
two
I get that, and that
never
was part
worked.
of the problem between.
Has given us one trophy in 25 fucking years.
Right, okay, but one argument at a time. My counterpoint to that is this. There is two separate sides of the coins, right? You have the side of the manager and the players he wants, and then you have the side of man management. Once the transfer window is closed, I understand him making the comments going, I want more, I want an established player, while the transfer window is open, right? No problem with that. Making those comments when the transfer is closed is counterproductive because let's say, for example, Emerson broke his legs in 4 places, Porro broke his legs in 4 places, I don't know, the horrific injuries, can't play, and he had no choice but to play Spence. All of a sudden,
They loaned them out though, so
no, but okay, but I'm just using for argument's sake. All of a sudden, Spence is kicked into the ground, no confidence, no belief, no nothing, and you have to use him. Comparing it to the way Ange's given the reaction with Spence, and again, there's a lot of things I disagree with Ange, and I think ultimately he will go at the end of the season, but Angie's comments about Spence were a mixture of I don't think you're good enough and here's an opportunity to prove me wrong, rather than I don't think you're good enough instant dismissal. Angie's comments about Spence were he's nowhere near the level of the standard that I want him to be. He's nowhere near the level of where he needs to be. And if he doesn't, hold on 2 seconds. And if he doesn't hit that level, he's not going to play. And if he hits that level, he'll get a chance. That gives the player some belief of going, do you know what? I'm not playing my best right now, but if I put the work in, I can reach that level. It's a completely different approach to man management. And we talk a lot about Ange and his lack of enthusiasm on the touchline and his lack of kind of
tactics.
No, not the topic that we're talking about. The lack of personal skills, the lack of communication with players, the lack of father figure behaviour, if you like.
Just relationship with the players.
Yeah, anywhere on that spectrum at this point. But you look at the way he's spoken about certain players in the media, and there's a complete contrast to Conte. And I just think Conte used Spence to make an argument against the board at complete disregard to Spence as a person and Spence as a young player and Spence as a character and Spence as somebody who's trying to grow and somebody who's trying to mature. Now, I couldn't imagine for me, right, if someone came to me at 18, 19, having an incredible season in one league, got promoted to a good club, an opportunity to really kick on, Tottenham have a historic record of English players getting into the England team through playing well at Tottenham, right? So if the minute I get in the door, the manager's refusing to talk to me and not even giving me an opportunity to earn my spot, however hard it makes it, I feel as though Conte's man management was in terms of the way he handled his feedback to players, especially publicly, was completely wrong. You want to attack the board, attack the board. I want him more in the transfer window, no problem with that. He did that, whatever.
Signed by Levy behind his back, basically. Though.
Granted, but don't use Spence as a pawn in your fight with Daniel Levy. Can you see where I'm coming from with that? He's a person. He's a human being. He doesn't deserve that.
Let me finish. Whilst it's nice to have sympathy for it, like at the end of the day, he is paid like a lot of money to do this job. Yeah, like he can take a bit.
Right, but this is the whole thing that's being discussed in a minute. Paid a lot of money or not doesn't give you the right to treat someone like shit.
You're not letting
the only people in this world.
You're not even letting me finish.
Go on.
He was also signed by Levy behind his back. We all know Conte did not want young players, right? It's pretty darn obvious, yeah. Oh. And like, it doesn't take rocket science to work that out. And also, the thing is, do you want honesty or do you want someone to toe the party line? That's the
right.
question.
But hold on. But both of those points you've made. Well, the first one specifically has nothing to do with Spence. Spence being signed by Levy behind Conte's back is not a Spence problem, it's a Levy problem. Go and take your issues out on the right person. Don't use someone. Imagine your boss, right, had a bunch of interviews and they hired you because you came in with a salary expectation of 50 grand a year, and the guy that they really wanted came in with a salary expectation of 62 grand a year, and the business just couldn't justify paying the other guy more. And you came in, and rather than your new manager at your new job, first day, gone in, feeling buzzy and really happy you beat the competition, rather than your manager go to the person who gives him the budget going, mate, you fucked me over, not giving me enough money for the guy that I wanted, going to you and going, mate, you're fucking shit. You're not the fucker that I wanted. You haven't got the fucking experience I want. You're a fucking waste of space. That's not your fault.
That's not what he said.
But he might as well have done.
But he didn't say that, though.
But he's
I actually have a scenario.
If
you want to throw this scenario at me, I can give it to you personal one. If you want.
Let's not.
No, because I can go into personal stuff if you want. No. You said about jobs and that. Once I'm a PGCE, my second mentor, pretty much told me, in other words, not exactly. She didn't want me. She didn't want blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And she was doing stuff behind my back. But I just got on with it because I had to bloody pass the PGCE.
But that doesn't make it right, though, Harry. The fact that we...
I know it's not right. It's not right.
But hold on. This is going to be completely... Hold on. This is going to be a completely non-Spurs related podcast at this rate. The fact that we as a society go, oh, life's not fair, let's not deal with it. If everyone has that attitude, then we will continue to fall victim to a arrogant selfish capitalist society in which the people that get treated like shit and used as a pawn and then dismissed spend half of their lives thinking they're not worth shit, when actually their life and their value as a human being is just as much as a guy who makes £50 million a year. And this is my point is, I'm trying to think about Spence as a youngster, think Spence about as a human being, thinks about youth. He took his problems with Levy, and we all know it was false promises from Levy, right? We all know that. It was obvious from the minute he rejected us the first time round. It was obvious that he'd been lied to in between out of desperation, right? Clear, no problem. Well, problem, but no problem generally, right? Spence, Conte took that out on the wrong person, and I truly believe now.
Well, I think it's because the journalist asked him about Spence's after we signed him, and then he said,
"But that's where he should have turned around. That's where he should have turned around and gone. As a whole, I was not happy with the transfer window, rather than targeting a specific player, a youngster who at that point had done nothing wrong to Conte whatsoever."
They asked him specifically about Spence. They didn't ask about the transfer window. Do you expect him to say?
That's where but this is where it comes down to man management, where he turns around and goes, "I'm not going to discuss individual players that signed because that's not what a manager does." But or that's not. I wouldn't know how do you word it. I'm not going to discuss individual players that signed because it's unfair on someone who's been in the building for 2 minutes. But I had a certain shopping list in the summer and I wasn't given it. That way, that doesn't target Spence specifically, still criticise Levy and the false promises without kicking a young kid down to the floor. Because I'm telling you this now, I truly think that there is a lot more to come from Spence, and I believe he would have been the perfect player for Conte's system, or not even Conte, but he would have been the perfect player generally, and we could have had so much more from him a year ago, 18 months ago, if he just had that belief in himself, and that all got knocked down by Antonio Conte.
Conte wanted Porro. Obviously, he wanted Porro because he signed him in the January after. He didn't want Spence.
But it doesn't matter what Conte wants or what he does. No, right. In the conversation between Daniel Levy and Tottenham's ambitions and winning trophies and whatever, yes, cool, it does matter.
I'm actually happy he made those comments about Spence because it opened up to what was really going on.
But we all knew that anyway. We're not stupid. You still shouldn't target a player to make a point.
Me and you will leave it out, yeah. We know what's going on. I know most of the signings that made a couple of club signings, but there's people out there.
Yeah, but they're just fucking stupid. If they haven't figured it out by now, then.
But what I'm trying to say is, I'm happy he made the comment and say club signing because it makes a point to say, look, a lot of these signings they signed, even like the Archie Grays now and the Bergvaus now, might most likely be club signings because they signed.
All right, okay. Let me ask you this question: do you think he could have achieved the same outcome without targeting Spence personally?
What do you mean?
Do you think he could have made the same point about club signings, but approached it differently without targeting Spence personally and ruining his confidence?
Personally.
But that's where he has. But that's where, as a manager, that's where as someone who handles the media well, you have a responsibility to make it about the club and not about the player. People can manipulate their words.
It's not his responsibility. If he didn't want him, it's not really his responsibility.
But as a manager, his responsibility is every single first-team Tottenham player who is employed by the club at the time he's a manager, whether he wants them or not.
But this is the problem we have with the club then. Because
no problem with that.
Just accepting people they don't want. I mean, to me, with the whole Levy being involved in that transfer, he didn't have a choice. We all know Levy personally did that deal, right?
Yeah.
So he did not have a choice. He got thrown Spence at him.
But this is what I'm saying.
Why give me a young player? Because why give me a young player when I literally told you I want?
Okay, so why not use it from a metaphorical sense then and go, oh, if you give your wife a shopping list to go and get steak, potatoes, fresh mint, vegetables, steak sauce, a bottle of red wine,
that's a long list.
She comes back with a pizza, chips, squash, whatever. Are you gonna feel like what you communicated was listened to? No, there are other ways. Listen, the amount of fucking metaphors I made, Conte gonna drop me a call and gone, yo, listen, what you got in the tank, mate? What metaphors have you got?
But we don't understand Conte's character, right?
But this is my problem. This is why I don't believe that.
I'm surprised Andrew isn't like this because he's Greek as well.
But this is why I think we made a mistake hiring Conte in the first place.
Blunt, and he's very honest, which is what a lot of people ask for years and years and years. And now he's been honest. Everyone's offended. This is what the problem we had when Conte went on that rant. Half of fan base were offended.
But that rant I didn't have a problem with because he
but
targeted the club.
You're just feeling sympathy for Spence, right? At the end of the day, he was just caught in the firing line, right? That's all it is.
But how is that fair on him?
Hearing
now, right? At the time, I didn't think enough of it.
Conte literally loaned out Spence 5 minutes later, anyway.
But this is my point, though. At the time in which we saw it all, I didn't think too much about it, right? Like all of us, we all kind of were on the same lines. Didn't really think a lot of it, whatever. Hearing him today talk about how soul crushing that was to be used being used to make a point to the club, having your name plastered everywhere as a young player who's just got a move that he really wanted, plastered everywhere, and then being shipped off 20 minutes later. I'm sorry, I'm so sick, right? And unfortunately, part of this relates to my personal situation, which I'm not going to talk about publicly, but I'm so sick of society and human beings going, you know what? Doesn't matter if I treat someone like shit. As long as I make a point, who cares? And I'm not saying that's your attitude. I'm not even saying that's Conte's attitude. I'm saying that's an attitude as a general. Hearing Spence today and seeing how genuinely devastated he looked about how he was treated and how he felt about how he was treated, I'm sorry. This is my problem with a certain category. And I'm not saying just win now managers, because it's not, because Klopp's a win now manager and Klopp was great with his characters and great with his players. There's a certain category of management style with I almost said something else then, with football managers where they believe in the old school style of almost borderline bullying to get players to act the way they want them to act.
It's not really bullying, though. He didn't cuss him out, did he? All he said was Spencer's a club signing. And everyone's now put the knickers in a bunch because he said he's a club signing. Now, we should feel sympathy for Spence. Spence should have known what he was getting into anyway.
Yeah, but at that point then, I think personally, the manager should come to the player and go, listen, you weren't my signing. I'm going to make that point. I'm pre-making you aware. Would you want to pick up the phone and see an article from Sky going, oh, look, your boss has just said that you're not good enough at your job and he would rather hire someone else? You'd be sitting there thinking, mate, I'm not coming into work tomorrow. Fuck you.
But then I'll get loaned out 5 minutes later anyway. So it's
what, to fucking Asda or fucking Tesco or some shit? No, but do you know what I mean? I feel like there's a certain category of manager, right?
If he didn't loan him out, I think you'd have a point. But the fact he loaned him out 5 minutes later kind of proves the point. Anyway,
all he did was loan him out to get him out of the way, not necessarily because
if he kept him at the club, I think he'd have a point. But he loaned him out 5 minutes later.
What makes you? I don't understand how you come to that logic.
Because if, say, you said, we should feel sympathy for Spence and blah blah blah. Yeah. At the end of the day, like they asked him specifically about Spence. They didn't ask him about transfer. They specifically about it. He said, Spence is the club signing. Yeah. And it was the first time I've ever seen a manager, because we have discussions on other podcasts about managers being out in the board, managers saying that the board didn't back them, whatever you want to call it. Because basically he said the board didn't back him, in other words, really, saying it was a club. So if they asked him about the transfer, like, on the whole, and then he name dropped Spence, I think he'd have more of an argument. Personally, it's just my opinion, more of an argument. But also another thing, because he loaned him out straight away, he said his point, and he was like, I clearly didn't want this guy to get, loan him out. And he was also, was he 19, 20 or whatever, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So, and he came from the championship as well, don't forget. I
just think
I can argue Ange didn't want him, because last season he loaned him out as well. So,
but this is my point, though. I think, and this is where it comes, because we will talk about Chelsea game in a bit, I promise, guys. But this is where it comes down to the point of me believing that Ange is going to go at the end of the season, and what I want in the next manager. I don't want another character like that. I'm not saying I don't want a winner, because you can be a winner and still be like that with your players, right? I don't want another hard-ass, tough man. This is how it is, aggressive in the face. No, I want someone who's passionate, who's great with his players, who's got that kind of, I don't want to say father figure, but kind of got that, you've had a bad game, put your arm around you, let's get on the training pitch, let's work it out, and let's be better for the next week. And this is why I would say that even though ability-wise, he's not up there with the best of the best. He's probably the best of a mid-level bunch, I would say, or one of the best of a mid-level bunch. This is why I would consider someone like Thomas Frank, because if you hear how he talks about his players and you hear how, he takes responsibility himself as a manager, doesn't put it on individuals. If you hear how, he talks, I don't know if you saw his dressing room.
No.
There was a clip from him in the dressing room the other day, and honestly, I'd have run through a wall for him with how he was. So I'd much rather someone like that, and I think our group of players, whether you agree with Tottenham's transfer policy or not, right in this very second, that's by the by. If you're going based on what we have, if Tottenham are adamant, this is how we're going to operate, no matter what, whether you agree with it or not, then we need to get a manager in that's going to benefit that. And someone like Thomas Frank, who is like that with their players and is likely to guide them. You ever seen the meme of the Ninja Turtles where it's the old guy helping them when they're young? And then them helping him when he's old. That's the kind of relationship and guidance we need in the next manager, because someone like Bergvall, someone like Gray, someone like Spence, those kind of players are going to benefit so much from it if that's the way Tottenham are going to go, and they're going to go back to young players, hopefully all hitting their peak at the same time, which is almost how we built that Poch team anyway. If they're going to say, no matter what, that's the approach we're going to go, the old school Southampton type approach where they're building young players, when it hits, it fucking kabooms. And then it's about going that final step with a little bit more experience in between. But for argument's sake, if we're going to take that initial route again, then we need to go with the type of manager who's going to bring out the best in those players. And I would rather see someone in the dugout who feels the same level of pain that the players do with a loss than someone in the dugout who, and this is where I kind of starting to agree with you, which I never did 6 months ago when we first had the debate about Ange and his persona on the touchline. I feel like I'd rather have someone now who looks like they're feeling the same pain as the players if we get it wrong, than someone who...
But because they're young players, in my opinion, they need more guidance.
But this is what I'm saying, though. Guidance from someone who shows that they care about them versus guidance from someone who looks from a glass fucking room, looks down through them. Ange doesn't get actively involved in training sessions. Stuff like, we need someone who's hands-on. We need someone who's stuck in. We kind of need...
That's why everyone's pining for Poch again as well.
But I'm the more and more watch Poch play with America, the more and more I think about how he played Chelsea. It's a no for me. I don't want another one of these wannabe Peps. I want one of these knows what his level is, knows who he is as a person, but is willing to work and grow with players. And I think I look at what Eddie Howe did when he left Bournemouth, right? And it's funny because when we discussed him leaving Bournemouth at the time, we both said we didn't think he was good enough for Tottenham, and at the time, probably wasn't. He was a mid-table manager who had been overperforming with low resources. I remember. Do you remember the Charlie Daniels volley? And into the top corner against Man City at home, and they lost that game just purely because they didn't have enough quality. I'm not saying obviously Eddie Howe would be a perfect option, and I actually think would be a perfect fit. He's not going to leave Newcastle, but someone of the same type, someone who can take a step back from their current job, can look at where they could have improved, come into a better club, so to speak, to a higher level, slightly more expectations, but can guide those players. That's where I think I'd much rather someone like Thomas Frank, who's humble, who's, progressive, who's not just in the way he thinks, but the way he acts and behaves as well. I think that's really important for us. And when Ange first came in, we were all like, oh, yeah, this confidence, this, that. I don't want to go through that false confidence again. I don't want to go to an arrogant manager again. I don't want to go to a manager who's...
For me, is I was never invested in Ange, though.
Yeah, so it's easy for you to say, but...
For me, I was like,
Even I hate to bring him up because everyone knows my opinion on him, but even Nuno, there wasn't that level of arrogance. There wasn't that level of I've earned this job, whatever.
I think it was really obvious. He thought he was kind of too big for the job was too big for him.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I feel like someone like Thomas Frank has got enough confidence for us to believe in him and enough persona to believe in him, but not the arrogance that's going to break apart the team before he started. Because unfortunately, I think Ange's arrogance is what's drifting this team apart. If I'm being honest, that's what it's starting to look like now.
I guess so, yeah. But like on Conte, we're not going to get a Conte Jose ever again because, well, at least not now,
At
because
least, no, not
no
for a while.
one
No.
like that will touch our team. Like people talking about stuff like people like Xavi, and I'm like, are you having a laugh? Something like Xavi's. Why would these managers come?
Yeah,
And like,
I
I would
guess
love
so.
a Diego Simeone, but he's not coming to Spurs. Like, this is not happening.
No.
And for me, no, I agree with Thomas Frank, but not for the same reasons you're saying. For me,
Okay.
I think we need someone to steady the ship because we're literally just a mess. And if
Yeah.
he can come in and even just make us finish like 3 years in a row or something, yeah,
It's
top six,
stability then,
seven,
isn't it?
just because I just think that's what we need right now. Someone's come in and just take us to
Yeah.
like top 6 3 years in
And
a
I
row.
think it has to be
And
the
then
right kind of character.
I don't think Frank would win us anything personally. It's just he might. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but I don't think he will. But at least he'll come in, and then we'll get some sort of like stability for like 3 years maybe or something, where we'll just be finishing top 6, 7, and say Europa League, whatever. But at least we'll have some sort of just stability, and maybe he can build a team of some sort where it's functional. Whether
Yeah.
we'll do anything special, I don't know. But because I was reflecting like you, and also the good point you made was about the young players. He probably is a good person for it, I guess.
Yeah.
And in the situation we're in, the best we can hope for is top 4 anyway.
Yeah.
The situation we're in, so you have to deal with the circumstances and appoint a manager which you think will do well with the resources he's given.
Yeah.
And like I said, I
I
think
think I just don't want to see us go and sign another manager. If the club are adamant that this is a transfer policy and this is how it's going to stay, whatever, cool. I'm sick of fighting it at this point. But at the same time, go and get a manager who fits that then. Don't go and get a manager who needs
the
experienced
reason
players who's going to come in and leave you with
well,
Danny Drinkwater and fucking whoever the fuck and Marcus Alonso like he left Chelsea in, or all the shit that he signed over the years in various Italian clubs. Don't go and get a manager who's going to leave you in the shit afterwards. Go and get one who's going to fit the philosophy you're in. And I just think, unfortunately, it would probably mean the end for someone like Son, even as a squad player. But also, maybe, because he did like that kind of personality about Pochettino, maybe that kind of character is what makes him think, you know what, right, put our arms together, let's drag this club forward. There's loads of different ways to look at it.
I'm
I
just
just
what I'm
think,
saying is I'm okay with Frank. I think he's probably the right person for this specific time we're in, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
because we're
I
such
think there's definitely a possibility he could overachieve. If all the
I just
cogs fall
doubt
right,
it.
like Pochettino, like if you think about Poch's ability as a manager versus what we actually did, I would argue the cogs were so perfect that even if Poch had been, because there were so many times where he made stupid decisions and so many times where he did things where you're like, this is not a top level manager, but because 95% of the things around him were such a perfect fit, it overlooked that a little bit. I think with someone like Thomas Frank, if all the cogs fall in the right place and all the players stay fit and everything falls in the right place, you could be looking at one of those situations where actually we do slightly overachieve. We do make it to a cup semi-final. We do get into some form of Europe and we do kind of make it into last stages because he's not getting ahead of himself. Do you know what I mean?
So I was reflecting on Spurs Manchester in the past recently because obviously Ange.
Yeah, me too, actually. I was doing that the other day.
With Redknapp, the reason Redknapp worked at the time period we were in at that point was because, and he kind of, I don't know if he's overachieved or not. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. But as in for me, because he always used to sign cheap players, and he was as a wheeler dealer.
He was great about getting the best out of them.
Levy kept him, I think, partly because of that, because he would buy Cranjoff for $2 million. He'd sign back some players for half the amount they sold them for. Like the phone King came back, for example. And he would like getting free transfers. Like got Gallas on a free, Sandro for cheaper, and he obviously he played entertaining football. That's all right as well, which got the fans on side. But obviously, he was an older manager, and eventually Levy wanted to go the younger route. If you are Renat, I think spoke about this when he got sacked. That's why they went for AVB afterwards. And with Poch, I think he partly got lucky also because Vertonghen was there, Rose and Walker were there before, and he just had
90% of the foundations were there for what he needed. You just needed to pick.
Just lucky that most of the pieces were already there, and he just put them in the right places. And like Alderweireld just obviously was the last missing piece in that defence.
Yeah.
Obviously, the midfield, he brought in Wanyama later on, but he
Yeah.
didn't really sign Sonogale. So he didn't really sign like that many players that were the first team. He kind of added 3 or 4, and
Yeah.
obviously the bench was awful. But because he kind of, that's kind of got lucky is that, like I said, 3 of the pieces or 4 of the pieces of that defense were already there, and he just fell. Like, what's the
Yeah.
word? And Redknapp got lucky sort of because a lot of players like Bale and Lennon were coming of age when he was there.
Yeah.
And obviously Huddleston and a few other players. Ledley King was still playing at the time. And obviously he fitted in a few things he brought for Kyle Walker. But like partly because of luck, partly because Redknapp was advantaged because he liked signing cheap players anyway. And he worked with them really well. And a lot of his
Poch was
targets.
advised because he likes working with young players anyway, because he'd been at Southampton and then Espanyol before that. This is
Yeah.
what makes me think Thomas
But
Frank's one of
then
those
it's
players that.
both did not achieve success really with us.
But this is what makes me think, though, is Thomas Frank might be the perfect fit because he's great with youth, but he does also sign the player here or there that go on and progress well. And another thing that gets me the most is I do think there's been a lot of links to some of our players with Brentford over the years, either before we'd signed them or whatever, like Archie Gray. They put a massive bid in for, I think it would have been Brentford's record signing if he'd have gone there.
Yeah, they wanted it.
And the package was like 40 million up front, and the package was totaling almost 50 million. Like,
Once we came in,
it was crazy. I do really feel that at this stage, it's the most logical
like
option.
I said, Brentford are like a mid-table side, right? That's why I think if he came in, we'd probably finish like under Martin Yole, like 6th, 5th, maybe at like that sort of level, and that's fine for 2-3 years. But I just don't think Frank will be the one to take us to like winning trophies and winning the league. Like I just think we need someone like him now, though, for like 2-3 years, and then if
it's interesting that we both agree on the same manager, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I can completely understand your side of the point and why you said that, and likewise with mine. It might be the most logical conversation we've ever had, you know.
Yeah, mine's more like situation. Yours is more about you looking at the transfer,
the character, and the transfer policy. And I just think I don't hearing Spence today and hearing that clip today. I don't want another repeat of that with any of those players. You got a problem with a player, you do it behind closed doors. You don't sit there and do shit like that because it's hot. And I'd understand, right? Like if. Like Harry, we had another incident. Let's say someone was refusing to play, he wanted to leave, he wouldn't. But let's say he did, we was. I'd understand the manager coming out and saying, "I'm expecting more from a captain." Or Madison Downing Tools. I'd understand the manager saying, "I expect more from a captain."
Criticise Werner.
Yeah, but again, Werner's a senior player. He's almost 30.
Yeah.
Saying that about a 30-year-old and saying that about an 18-year-old are two completely different things. And one has the experience and the life lessons to know better, and one is just beginning that journey. And if, as a manager, as a person, whatever, if you can't see the difference between the two, there's light years difference between the two.
Bear in mind, Conte wanted players to win it now, so like for me.
But again, we always knew, and it comes back to that point. We always knew that was never going to be viable because even if let's say he did win a League Cup, right? Let's say he won the League Cup. Based on his experience in the Premier League, you look at Chelsea and the shit he left them with. We'd have been paying rebuild for like 5 years afterwards for the sake of one League Cup. Not saying that I wouldn't have wanted that, but it would have been completely counterproductive for everything Tottenham have always stood for, if that makes sense. We've always stood for building the young players, playing attacking football,
not
whatever.
What we've always stood for. This is just the narrative that Levy, etc., put out for years since 2005 because they went down the youth policy route. So he even said in an interview, Levy, you can actually Google this. They asked him about Spurs signings in the past, and so he goes, "At Tottenham, we don't buy stars, we make stars." Hence,
you referenced that.
So this isn't a whole Spurs always done this. Spurs actually, back in the day when my dad was going in the 80s and the 70s, we were actually known as a team who bought big players. I mean, we bought Ricky Villa and Oscar Diaz, who were two massive players in Argentina at the time. And that was like a massive coup. Jurgen Klinsmann, obviously back in Alan Sugar's days.
From Monaco,
So we weren't always known for being a youth setup, right? It was just the reason they went down that route, Levy, was because he knew he could bring in players and say cheaper, especially young English players at the time when Martin Yole was in charge, which is why he brought in Frank Arnesen, who was approached by Chelsea later on, because he wanted to go the director of football / coach route, that set up initially. And it just happens so that when Redknapp joined, what was it, 5 years later or something? 4 or 5 years later, those young players who had stayed came of age just because we had, say, Bale and whatever, and he had a mixture of bit of everything because he liked to sign his, experienced players. So, and also with Poch was the same sort of repeated cycle 5 years later.
This is
And
what makes me think that
the
we could
problem
go
is,
through a similar
always when it
process
goes
with
to like that point, the club is not willing to say, look, well, obviously
give
we
you
know
the last 2 or 3
the
players
last
you need to get over the
three
line.
top players. Because Renap said, I remember he wanted a striker, a centre half, and I think a winger or something.
Yeah.
And they bought him Nelson and Zaha, obviously. But like he knew he was craving a striker about since we got in the Champions League, like 2-3 years, I think it was. He wanted a top striker. And when we bid for Negredo, Aguero, whatever, like half the money they wanted. So what I'm saying is, like, youth policy can only get you so far because you might have some players who will stay out of playing time and hoping and false promises and hoping to progress, and they like the manager. Like Modric stayed another year because he loved Redknapp. He would have gone on to Chelsea otherwise, even though Lee refused to sell. But I'm saying he wanted to leave. But this is what I mean. It's just because we're not really a mess. It just happens that those messes at those time periods kind of coincided with a certain manager, and then certain players that joined that fixed like a mixture of a puzzle. Let's say they fit the puzzle together. Oh, that's what our
See,
11
this
was.
is what makes me think that Frank
And
will be the perfect balance because I
then
think we've got a balance of youth and experience,
Frank
which
probably
is
would suit Levy, I think, because I hate to say it this way because I don't want someone that suits Levy, but because he likes the young players, like I said, and because the transfer has always been since 2005 by young players. At the time, it was viable because after 04, I hate to bring this up, after 04 when Arsenal were Invincibles, we had a very aging team like players like Jerry Redknapp, Tarico, really old players, and they needed to actually do a youth thing, bring
regeneration.
in because they had so many old players in. So at the time, it actually would made sense. But later on, when Yol made the Europa League twice and got to quarterfinals as well and stuff, he was craving like 2 or 3 players to help him, more senior players to help him, and the club didn't give that to him. So what I'm saying is, the youth process can only get you so far, and this is why I think Conte.
It can, but this is where I think because Conte was kind of like the polar opposite. Jose was kind of a little bit more of a balance than what he wanted, but we had the younger players and he wanted a bit more old. I think
What I'm
someone
saying
like Thomas
this is
Frank,
why
I
the
definitely
majority of
think,
younger players we sign, like Joel would get given a player. Some of them he picked out, but most of the time he just given a player that Arneson picked, and they might have picked them together, might have not. And because they were cheaper players at the time as well, I mean, in 04, 05, and 06, the money was not as big, even though Chelsea were there. The money was not as big to find gems, and we didn't have social media, and it was a lot easier to find gems, and just easier to do, I guess. And we would sign tons and tons of young players every year. Like we're talking 4 or 5, maybe 21-year-olds. And because he even said this in an interview, he didn't have a choice. Like when we signed Bell at 18, he chucked him straight in. He just didn't have a choice. Ziegler was not like, there's so many players that just chucked straight in. And he just kind of made a team out of what he got given. So in reality, with the little money he had, it's just like amazing to get us fifth twice. But again, it was the youth policy, and it worked to a certain extent. But when it came down to like the crux of crunch time and being a top team, it only took us so far.
yeah, we never got the little bit over the edge. Yeah.
So I just
Anyway,
think when Frank comes in, it will finish fifth twice, and then he'll probably, if he has any ambition, will ask for more, and he won't get it.
Yeah. Anyway, there's no point speculating because Andrew's still here. But let's talk about Chelsea game. I didn't really talk about it for about 10 minutes anyway, so I was kind of glad that we've got into another topic. But yeah, so Chelsea then, Stamford Bridge then. I can't lie, I think this is going to be a hot-headed fight fest. Because Chelsea are falling off a cliff. We've got nothing to play for in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games where there's like 3 red cards.
Like 2-2 or something, again, like the Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah, honestly, I seriously think, I really wouldn't be surprised if it was the Battle of Bridge 2.0.
What kind of team do you think is going to play, though? I don't know.
Well, have we got a midweek game after that, or is it just Southampton?
On a Sunday, and then we've got the Europa League the following Thursday.
I think he'll go strong against Chelsea, shit against Southampton, strong against Frankfurt.
Then, nothing taking into consideration the Southampton games during the protests. I don't know whether that was a factor or not. I don't know.
I mean, he wasn't bothered that he was potentially going to hand Arsenal the title. I don't think he's bothered that
Yeah,
we're
about a
protesting.
protest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I
then
would say
I think we're probably going to lose by 1 goal because that's what normally happens.
I'm going to say Chelsea go 1-0 up. We fight back. Loads of shit kicks off, and then Chelsea score at the end and win 2-1.
Or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say Chelsea 2-1.
I'll probably agree with that. 2-1.
Fucking hell. Should we just title this episode The Agreement? Because that's basically what it's been. Well, that was nice and easy. Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough one. I think I've actually...
You know, we've only ever won once at Stamford Bridge, I think, in the Premier League. And I was
Yeah, and that was when...
Dele Alli got that goal.
Dele Alli, yeah, I was talking about that actually. So a customer at work, he's a Chelsea fan. And he's got 50 quid on Spurs to win 3-1. And if it comes in, he gets like $6,000. So he said, "I'll give you $1,000 just for the lols." He was like, "I'll wait till you come in and bully me, and then I'll bribe you to stop." I was like, "Mate, fine by me." His argument was, "Well, it's not my money, so who gives a shit?"
We better win 3-1 now.
Mate, imagine the scenes.
Yeah.
Got on a massive bender.
We're dancing on Greg's.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a weird one. Chelsea are in free fall. I honestly don't think their manager is going to make it to the end of the season.
You think Maresca's going to get sacked as well?
Yeah, because he just... Like, if I look at their form, right?
Oh, they're not doing well, are they?
I'm actually off on that Thursday. I can watch the game. Excuse me. So, they drew 2-2 to Bournemouth at home, beat Wolves, lost to City, beat West Ham, then lost to Brighton in the Cup, lost to Brighton again in the league, lost to Villa, battered Southampton, beat that Danish team whose name I can't pronounce in the Conference League, narrowly beat Leicester, beat that Danish team 1-0 at home, then lost to Arsenal.
That's kind of expected, though, that game, I think.
In the Arsenal game, they had a lot of possession, but minimal shots on target. Yeah. I don't know. Like, the lineups he's putting out are a bit dodgy. They're not really... Like, they've lost the identity they had. And that's from seeing from posts from Chelsea fans that I follow on Twitter. They sort of lost the identity they had and lost what was positive about them at the start of the season. I think they will still win, but I think it's going to be one of those games where it all just kicks off.
I mean, we lost last season, remember, as well, I think.
Yep. I still haven't given up from that. I still haven't accepted that 4-1. I can't lie.
What do you mean?
Like, Son's goal should have counted, and at that point then, we probably won't get...
9 men on the halfway line?
Say?
The 9 men on the halfway line?
Yeah, but listen, right. In my logic is this. If the Son goal counts, which it should have done, then Romero wouldn't have gone in rash because it would have been 2-0 up. Probably wouldn't have given away a penalty. Definitely wouldn't have been sent off. At that point, all right, even if you do give away a penalty, we've still got 11 men. At that point then, we're not playing such suicide ball because Romero hasn't gone off. Van de Ven doesn't get injured. Madison probably still gets injured because he's made of glass. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like the dynamic of the game is totally different. But anyway, he said, she said, has been, will be. Is what it is. I'm saying 2-1. You're saying 2-1. So,
hopefully, we'll win. But I'm not having hope to
don't see it. I think if Maresca loses that game, I think the fans call for his head.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know they were doing so badly because I just don't really follow Chelsea.
It's mad because of that. Despite how shit they've been, they're still fourth in the league.
I know that's why I'm surprised.
It's crazy.
Because I think they might leave him to the end of the season. If they finish fourth, no point. They'll keep him.
Yeah.
That just shows how bad the league is, really, to be honest.
It's mental, isn't it? Next week, we will preview the Southampton game and the Frankfurt game.
It's that home leg first as well.
Yeah, and then... So when's that? So that's the 31st. Then what game we play?
31st of March.
Then the 7th, we will talk about Wolves. And then the 14th, we'll be able to talk about Wolves. And to be honest, once we preview the first leg of the Frankfurt game, we'll probably preview the tie as a whole and then not talk about it again until after, because I'm sick of talking about like one leg and then talking about what happened in that leg, and that's going out before, like that's gone out after the second leg's been played. It's just a bit stupid. So the 21st, that weekend, that Monday, well, it'll probably be the Tuesday because you're going to the Forest game, aren't you?
Yeah, it's on Bank Holiday Monday, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, depending on what time I get back, because obviously I'm in Southampton visiting my little brother that weekend, I'll try and get back early enough so we can record.
On the Monday,
well, no, we'll record like talking about the Europa League tie, and we'll just have it talking about the Frankfurt tie over both legs. Because if we're going to preview it 2 weeks, effectively a week and a half before, and not talk about it again, then it makes sense to do that episode talking about just the Frankfurt game and what happened and whatever.
So on the Tuesday or the Monday? Sorry, I'm just asking.
Depending on what time I get back.
Yeah.
From Southampton.
It depends on me what I'll kind of get back from Forest as well.
Well, I was thinking about recording it before Forest game.
Sunday, basically.
No, because the Sunday I'll still be in Southampton. So I'll be coming back from Southampton on the Monday. But if I'm home for like midday, there's nothing stopping us recording at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, sorry, I'm confused. So I thought you meant don't worry. It's my bad. I think on Easter Sunday. I'm like, what?
No. I'll still be in Southampton, so and I'm not taking my stuff.
Monday, Monday before I go to the game, basically.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Because it's only going to be an hour-long episode, so as long as I'm back by
because we'll know if we go league or not at that point anyway. So
yeah. So as long as I'm back by like 3:30, then an hour to record 4:30. That's still earlier than when you go to the game anyway, isn't it?
I'll go to my dad's to eat at like 6 or like 5:30 or something.
That's what I'm saying. So realistically, as long as I'm back by no later than 4 o'clock, then there's no reason why we can't record that on the Monday.
Yeah.
And then after that, it'll be Liverpool, then West Ham, and then we're basically at the end of the season at that point. Like if we're at the Europa League, so
I don't want to talk about if we get knocked out. Nothing there.
I think we'll do a deep dive into the season and the more detailed analytics and whatnot.
You just see if we get knocked out, who stays the rest of the season, or if they just get rid of him.
I think it only makes sense to get rid of him if they can get the guy they actually want. If they're going to just appoint Mason to the end of the season, there's no point. I might as well just keep him, save the money, put it in the transfer budget.
It makes a difference when they sack him.
To be fair, I'm not going to lie. If he does end up being Thomas Frank, then I think Brentford would let him go because they're not going to go down. They're not going to get higher.
He's been there for years, right? Hasn't he?
Say?
How long has he been there for? Isn't it long?
Been there fucking ages now.
4 or 5 years or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's closer to 5 years, to be fair. Let me have a look. He's got a 43% win rate at
Brentford, yeah.
At Brentford, 1.5 points per game. He's been there since October 2018. 7 years this year.
Oh my god!
I think it's definitely time for him to move on.
I think they'll let him go then because
I think they will. Yeah.
Like
when's his contract? Has he recently signed a new contract or not?
I'm not too sure. Let me just Google it because I'm not sure.
That's what I'm doing now.
Thomas Frank. Brentford, blah blah blah.
Summer 2027. So he's literally got 2 years left after this.
I think they'll let him go.
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't know. I don't think we're gonna get Ariola, to be honest. If they're born from Europe, ain't gonna come.
Apparently, though, he's interested in talking to Tottenham, which is interesting.
And then, obviously, the Silva's been talked about as well, but I don't know about Marco Silva.
Do you know what, right? Paul O'Keefe actually tweeted about Marco Silva the other day, which was a really interesting point. Marco Silva deliberately tanked it with Watford so he could get a Premier League job. Like, I don't want a character like that around. We just had a long conversation about managers and treatment of players and what we don't want for the next period of Tottenham. Being realistic, going and getting someone like him, if he came into Spurs and then all of a sudden Man United became available and interested, he'd do whatever it took to get a move. And I don't want a character like that. I'm not going to lie, I'm 90% certain if it's not Iriola, it'll be Thomas Frank.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be happy with that.
The other thing that worries me, it's not about Frank. Say if he doesn't come, I think we're going to get McKenna. I've had this bad feeling we're going to get McKenna.
Yeah, me too.
Because Ipswich will go down and then they'll be cheap. And then, I don't know, man. I think he's also ex-Spurs, right, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He was part of
that link as well. And I know he was on a list for like United and the Spurs were looking at him as well. Because obviously I'm just looking at Premier League experienced managers and I'm like, they're surely going to look at him, especially because of the Spurs connection. Like, if we don't get Frank, I'm quite worried again with someone like McKenna. It's just, I don't know why, I just had this really bad feeling.
Hello, Sandro, mate. Yeah, when your coaching run is done. Yeah, no problem, mate. Job's yours when you want it. No, I'm only saying that because I tagged you in that tweet, didn't I? He was saying he'd love to manage Spurs one day. Listen, if he plays Red Apple, get him in the dugout. Let's go. Is there only one Brazilian, Sandro? Actually, there's probably not.
I know you haven't seen that interview because we are Tottenham TV interviewed Harry Redknapp, and they asked him about which players were getting his Spurs side from his current Spurs side.
And Sandro was in there, wasn't it?
And none of them basically pretty much get into the Spurs side, he said, that he had. So he's like Van de Ven and King goes, Ledley King, obviously. But like Romero Dawson, he put in Romero initially, and at the end he changes his mind. He's like, nah, I want Michael Dawson. Anyway.
Well, yeah, but surely that Van de Ven and Ledley King are not.
They asked him, you know, which.
Last thing before me, what I hate the most is when people go, who would you rather have in your side, Ronaldo or Ramos? They play different positions. It's not comparable. Like, they'll pick a right-sided centre-back and be like, oh, you've already got a left-sided centre-back. Who would you want? Another left-sided centre-back? Or right? And it kind of like, they kind of guide you. Like, they were like, oh, who would you rather have in your team?
Ledley did actually play on the left anyway. But
anyway,
and then he went on the rant saying, because he talked about like United and Chelsea, saying and he's right. I'm sorry, I agree with him. What players back in Jose's time at Chelsea, in 06, what players
getting to now, none of them.
So, like, he makes one of my rants saying that football was better back then. Like, it bloody was, and the footballers were better as well. Unfortunately, the Premier League, as we just said now about Chelsea, that they're fourth place and then like the worst.
And they're dog shit. Yeah,
like it just goes to show the quality has gone down.
Yeah.
But. Yes, they asked, and then he spoke about, obviously Ange being 15. He goes, I was sacked when I was 4. He said,
I saw that. I'll tell you one thing. We'll end it on this.
Yeah,
I would take 2025 Aaron Lennon over 2025 Brennan Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed this episode, actually. I wasn't really sure how I was going to go, but the Spence comments and the way we kind of deep dived into previous managers and kind of their approach to man management and stuff like that, and what's going to work, what we think will work well with the squad we've got. It is really interesting to see. We will have a proper intense managerial debate once we know sort of if he's going, if he's staying, whatever. Definitively, we can only go based on a hunch right now, which is we both think, like I say, he's gone no matter what. But yeah, make sure you guys make sure you subscribe. Drop us a 5-star review on Spotify, that'd be great. Some of you guys might or may not have noticed the episodes are now going out at 9:30 on a Friday morning. It seems to be doing a lot better on YouTube. The views seem to be picking up again, apart from Guess Who, but international breaks, our views always drop anyway. The views, like the episode before this, had like 138 views or something. It's the most we've had in a while on a specific episode, so that's really good, and the watch time was quite good as well. So generally, I think we're moving in the right direction with the changes to the thumbnail and the title and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it. And then the TikTok I posted at about 6:30 is kind of like a prompt of, the episode's out, go and check it out, because people are outside of work. The first time I posted it at like 12:30 midday, and it was crap. I didn't make any difference at all. So I've decided to go with like sort of 6:45.
You know better than me for TikTok.
6:30. Yeah, well, I'm just kind of experimenting. But yeah, make sure you guys make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review on Spotify, and we'll catch you next week. Come on, you Spurs!
Spurs.